Our next speaker has recently graduated from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, for her master's degree in anthropology. She teaches the contemporary world and elective courses in the BA Sociology program. She currently serves as the advisor of the Philippine League of Sociology Students MMSU chapter. With her topic on the rights of the child, please help me welcome Ms. Anna Marie Faith Corpuz.
Good morning, everyone. Today we will discuss the rights of the child. Basically, the commitment in safeguarding children from the moment of conception until they become adults is well entrenched in international conventions. Under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, a child would refer to any human being below the age of 18 years. Inherent in this definition would be the understanding that childhood is a delicate developmental phase, and as such, it should be a protected time in which children must be allowed to grow, learn, play, and flourish with dignity. The view that the child, when given the right love and care, and honed in an encouraging environment, becomes a reservoir of potential is at the core of the rights of the child. Further, pursuant to the mandates of the United Nations, specifically the Conventions on the Rights of the Child, the following initiatives have been adopted by the Philippines to protect the Filipino child. Una dyan, yung Council for the Welfare of Children, or shortly CFC. The CFC is the focal interagency body of the Philippine government for children. So the specific mandate of the CFC is to coordinate the implementation as well as the enforcement of all laws, formulate also and monitor, and evaluate policies, programs, and measures for children. So under the CFC, nandyan yung collaborative na engagement ng mga frontline agencies like the DSWD. We also have respective LGUs and the risk and rehabilitation centers also as extensions of the DSWD, catering to juvenile delinquents and other children in risk and at risk and at conflict with the law. So we also have here the National Framework for Child Protection. This one is the Philippine version of the GIJAI Declaration of Policy, the Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1990. So from this ratification, specific pronouncements of child protection were covered. This would include protection of children from armed conflict, sale of children, child prostitution, as well as pornography. And then in 2000, when the MDGs were specifically mandated, kinomplement na DJI Philippine version the Convention on the Rights of the Child, this framework. And in here, there's also now the stipulation of the protection of children from all forms of abuse and violence as fundamental to their survival. And then nandun din yung the right of the children to be fully developed adults and also their right to participation. And then this strategic framework is actually a 25-year action plan, which is now serving as a roadmap for our national government, as well as for the local government and the private sector and non-government organizations in setting priorities for action and in allocating and utilizing resources to promote the rights of Filipino children. And of course, we have the PD 603, from which the J12 rights of the child nga discussed tayo tatakit nakaisurat. Okay? So, Presidential Decree 603 is also known as the Child and Youth Welfare Code. And for it to become a comprehensive framework and syempre batas na rin from which all the GIJAI, ubobra and implementation can enforcement the CFC are drawn from, PD 603 legally defines special categories of youth, including youthful offenders, and directs them all to the Ministry of Social Services and Development for this agency to provide comprehensive services to assist in youth development. So, at the core of the Declaration of Policy of PD 603 would be the regard on children as the most important assets of our nation, and that every effort should be exerted to promote his or her welfare and enhance his or her opportunities for a useful and happy life. So, with all of this being said, what then are the rights of the child? Umunadta would be that every child is endowed with the dignity and worth of a human being from the moment of his conception as generally accepted in medical practice, and has therefore the right to be born as well. So kaya't nakasawin, at the moment of conception, the child is already endowed with the right to be born. So no addan na buo, after nga nag-chorvalengers na nanang kanitatang, DJ na buodzay, addan iti right na to be born. This is the reason why dagitay haan nga medically induced nga abortion nga kunkunada ket maiparit and considered as a clear violation against the right of the child to be born, and it is also tantamount to the impairment of their endowment of dignity as human beings. Okay, and then number 2, the second right of the child would be that every child has the right to a wholesome family life that will provide him with love, care, understanding, guidance and counseling, and moral and material security. So, syempre, an end to the right to be born should be the right to be cared for and to flourish in a stable, healthy, and loving environment that will further protect the dignity and worth of the child as a human being. Ibig sabihin, hindi natatapos yung obligasyon ng mga magulang or yung mga designated na primary caregivers ng isang bata kapag ka naibigay na yung primary needs niya. Yung bata ay entitled sa right na mahalin, maramdaman ang pagmamahal na iyon, 10 ng kalinga, pagkakaaruga at saka paggabay. So dito nakikita na entrenched sa rights of the child ang responsibilities din ng mga adult na nakapalibot sa kanya, at saka yung responsibilidad ng mga adults to involve themselves also in emotional work and not purely on satisfying the primary material needs of the child. Number 3, every child has the right to a well-rounded development of his personality to the end that he may become happy, useful, and active member of the society. So under this, the child is not considered as a mere creature lang living in the state. Kaya't nangarod nga sa when, his or her primary caregivers, as supported syempre by the facilities of the state, should help hand in hand in honing the child's aptitudes and potentials. So paramount to this would be the role again of the child's primary institutions, especially the family. So there's a strong cognizance of the role of the family in molding the character of the child, at saka nandoon din yung centrality of a stable home, of having a stable home in this role. Consequently, every member of the family is asked to strive to make the home a wholesome and harmonious place, kasi the general atmosphere and conditions of the home can make or break the child's development. The fourth right of a child would be that every child has the right to a balanced diet, adequate clothing, sufficient shelter, proper medical attention, and all the basic physical requirements of a healthy and vigorous life. This one is very simple and self-explanatory. This is an end to the right to life, since these provisions relate to our basic needs. We cannot expect children to flourish or reach adulthood even if they are if they are deprived of balanced diet, clothing, shelter, and proper medical attention. And for this, I think it's very important to note that if we depend our future to our children, then it's a vested obligation on our part, and syempre of the state as well, to be able to provide these basic needs at the very least. The number five rights of the child would be that every child has the right to be brought up in an atmosphere of morality and rectitude for the enrichment and strengthening of his character. So this right particularly calls for the presence of good role models to surround the child in his or her formative years. This also quite implies the need for the child to be exposed in institutions whose primary function is moral enrichment, character building, and values formation. So in this case, the importance of the school, most specifically the basic education, and in primarily in values formation, kasi if you remember naman, 'di ba, in kinder and in nursery schooling, very basic dagijay pelang ititad da nga forms of learning, but the socialization there in terms of values formation, in relation to values formation, I should say, would be the most important role of primary schools in this particular right, because here basic discipline ay naituturo sa mga bata, basic respect, and syempre good conduct are crystallized as early as in kinder and in nursery. So again, the collaborative effort between and among our institutions, our social institutions, are needed in bringing up the child in an atmosphere of morality, as well as the rectitude for the enrichment and strengthening of his character. Number six right would be every child has the right to an education commensurate with his abilities and to the development of his skills for the improvement of his capacity for service to himself and to his fellow men. So the right to education is not just about learning per se. This right is also about social placement. Okay, so at the core of the number six right would be social placement, meaning that it ensures that it ensures the child of the necessary competence and skills so that one day he or she may land on a job and syempre ensure greating flourishing not just for him but also for his family. In this flourishing, the individual is expected to better see himself in the grander scheme of things where he fits in, and syempre it would put him in a better position to see how he can help his society to become better. And then the number seven right would be that every child has the right to full opportunities for safe and wholesome recreation and activities, individual as well as social, for the wholesome use of his leisure hours. Well, childhood, we have to acknowledge, is a beautiful developmental phase because it's mainly intended for play and leisure. Playing with other kids and giving them enough time for play helps a lot in strengthening their social development as well as their character and syempre even skills. And to uphold this right, structures for leisure such as playgrounds, parks, and more should be accessible to all children. And of course, the access to this or DJ kinaaduna iti more accessible ways for kids to play safely is a role that we should give to the government also. But syempre, we also have to make sure as community members nga DJ level of safety can comfort the kids, can DJ encouragement to play, having an encouraging environment for them to play and socialize with other kids should also be there too. Number 8 would be that every child has the right to protection against exploitation, improper influences, hazards, and other conditions or circumstances prejudicial to his physical, mental, and emotional, social, and moral development. So the state recognizes the vulnerability that comes with the tender age of children. Their lack of discernment and physical weakness are often the reasons why some are entrapped in very hazardous situations like child labor, exploitation, trafficking, and more. So this right is again tied to the right to the fundamental right of any person, including the child, to life and basic freedoms afforded to them or should be afforded to them by the law. This right, hence the number 8 right, should be well supported by the necessary government agencies which protect children from exploitation, abuse, exposure to harmful substances, and more. And again, ulit-ulit nating sinasabi na ito naman ay hindi isang external na problema lang at hindi siya kailanman pwedeng ma-separate doon sa primary experiences ng isang bata. So, kailangan pa rin dito at actually mas kailangan dito sa right na ito yung assertion at saka yung role ng mga magulang at mga primary caregivers sa pagpigil or doon sa avoidance ng pagkaka-expose ng mga bata sa ganitong mga exploitative na situations at sa ilan pang mga hindi kaaya-ayang mga sitwasyon kung saan sila ay accidentally nako-caught up with. And then number 9, every child has the right to live in a community and society that can offer him an environment free from pernicious influences and conducive to the promotion of his health and the cultivation of his desirable traits and attributes. Sobrang related nito dun sa previous na diniscuss natin. Sinasabi dito that it's not enough that the child is raised in a loving family or well protected by the state. The number 9 right, it's also very important too that he lives in a community where his dignity is protected and that his skills and potentials are also cultivated. Inherent dito'y nga right nga rod, dijay recognition, nga masapol met nga adamakita ti ubing, nga sense of propriety, kadagiti karuba na, wenno ka barangayan na, or generally kadagizay community members nga kapulpulapol na, nga they should be consistent as adults in their behaviors, that they should try at the very least to be role models to children, and that they should at all times, if possible, preach moral uprightness. Nga norumwar di ubing, ije balayda, ket mafil na, nga safe isuna nga magna, orera brabii, wenno nga mabalin na lata iti agay-ayam nga awan iti, kabkabuteng na. The number 10 right is that every child has the right to care, assistance, and protection of the state, particularly when his parents or guardians fail or become unable to provide him with his fundamental needs for growth, development, and improvement. Actually, pagtipunan tayo ni number 10 ko ni number 11 kasi it's like a continuing nga provision on the rights of the child. And also, because of that, in right number 11, every child then has the right to an efficient and honest government that will deepen his faith in democracy and inspire him with the morality of the constituted authorities, both in their public and private lives. So these two extend to all categories of children: the mentally challenged, the handicapped, the neglected, and the abandoned child. The state should have a complete set of collaborating agencies, a complete mandate on the standards of operation, and the funds, of course, should be available to support these implementations. Encouraging the help of non-profit groups, community values reorientation programs, as well as the help of sectarian groups are also essential for this right to be respected. Right number 11 of the child specifically calls on the government to have child-inclusive policies that would help in the well-rounded development of children. That education is just one of the rights of children, and the state should do more for their protection. The fact that issues on exploitation, child labor, and trafficking are still rampant in the country strengthens the call for action for the government to take a more active part in safeguarding the welfare of children. Interestingly, this right also expresses that public officials in themselves are beacons of morality and should express at all times and in the highest degree a sense of honesty and good behavior for children to emulate. And then the last right of the child would be that every child has the right to grow up as a free individual in an atmosphere of peace, understanding, tolerance, and universal brotherhood, and with the determination to contribute his share in the building of a better world. So this one naman extends not only to the right to life, the fundamental right to life, but also the fundamental right to liberty. So dito nga provision, uno dito nga right, it was drawn from extreme conditions of war and insurgency in the country kung saan naiipit ang mga kabataan sa gitna ng gulo na hindi naman nila pinili. So dahil dito, this right calls for a peaceful and just community where adults, including the state, could work together to build a more tolerant and violence-free environment so that children could express their full potential without threat to life and freedom. Okay? So those are the 12 rights of the child. So in conclusion, Nelson Mandela once said, and I quote, that there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way it treats its children. So the rights of the child is institutionalized because we acknowledge the child as our society's greatest potential resource, vital in our society's continuity. As such, if we are to depend on them for our future, the major takeaway here sa rights of the child is to become better adults, be better citizens worthy of our children's emulation, and be better statesmen so that we could adhere efficiently to the mandated rights of our children. So with that being said, thank you very much for listening. Isang mapagpalayang araw sa ating lahat. Thank you.
She is a human rights educator duly accredited by the Commission on Human Rights. Apart from handling elective courses in the BA Sociology program, as associate professor, her work also includes being a researcher for the National Bioenergy Research and Innovation Center, or NBERIC. Her discussion for today centers around the rights of students. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Marlene Kakatian.